welcome to another episode of the RAW Barbell Club podcast. If you're new to our channel, welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, guys, I'm so glad to have you back. If you have any comments or questions about this episode, please leave them below and make sure you click that subscribe button just down here and click that notification tab so you get updates on when our next episode is out. Alright, hey guys, and welcome to the RAW Barbell Club podcast. I'm your host, coach, and all-around good guy, Andy. Today I'm here with, I actually don't know your last name.
Curry, Melanie Currey.
Melanie Currey. Mel is, you don't mind me calling you Mel, right?
Yeah, everyone calls me Mel.
Okay. Mel is an OCR racer. She does a lot of enduro stuff. And how old are you, Mel?
I'm mid-50s.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she does all of this as a masters athlete, essentially.
Well, they don't really have a masters division.
No, but I mean, like, you are a masters athlete. Yeah. Which is really cool.
Yeah.
When did you get into OCR stuff?
5 years ago.
Okay, so you haven't been in it that long.
No, I came from a background. In my family, my father had been a professional sportsman and he didn't believe that girls should play sport.
Yeah.
So I went through my whole childhood and youth without playing sport. And the couple of attempts I had at it were disasters. And it wasn't until my children grew up that I took sport up for myself.
Wow. And what was it that led you to getting into sport?
Well, I'd always said to them, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I think there comes a point in your life when you think about what you've said to your kids and how you've brought them up. And I thought I've never really shown them. I've always been the best at the things that I knew I could do, but I hadn't stepped outside my comfort zone. So I thought I'm going to try new things. So show them you can change.
And what was the first race you did?
The first race I did, I fell into, it was a Tough Mudder.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was 23 Ks and it was down near Penrith.
Oh, down near my way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you find, was that the one, they do that in Appin, right?
Yeah, they do it all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the Tough Mudder is the one where obviously there's mud involved.
There is mud and there's obstacles and it's not very skills based, it's more like face your fears.
Yeah. Because there's that electricity wall and the ice.
Yeah, there's ice baths and there's you catch a crawl under these wires that were live and then you have to finish run through a whole lot of live wires. So yeah, it's fear based. You've got to jump off things and dive through flames. So you do have to have some sort of athletic training because you've got to run the 23 Ks and there are bits where you're swinging off monkey bars.
But you do get a beer at the end.
You do, yes.
Yeah. So for me, that would be my favourite part of the obstacle course.
Well, for me, I thought it was going to be too, but it was a beer that I don't drink, and it was like the 21st obstacle. You get to the finish and you've got to drink a beer you don't like. So yeah, anyway.
What beer do you like to drink?
Well, I don't really drink anymore, but when I do drink, I probably go for a Corona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an easy drinking beer.
Yeah.
You guys actually have a lot of really cool breweries and stuff here.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We've got the new Devil's Elbow that's opened and they're doing their own craft beers up there, and then we've got a couple downtown. So they're great places to go and meet and have food and
Yeah, well, I had breakfast there this morning.
Oh, nice.
At Devil's Elbow.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's very close to CrossFit Dubbo.
Yes.
So it was nice.
Yeah.
How did you find the seminar yesterday?
It was great, awesome. I had a fear of snatches. I don't know why, but you know how sometimes you just have this thing in your head and so every time you go to do it, it stops.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I knew I couldn't get it right and I guess that's what it was. So I never ever felt comfortable, but I came away from it thinking, you know what, I want to go and try and see how heavy I can actually get to over the next few weeks. And it's a great lift for me because a lot of what we do requires upper body strength and it also requires you to be able to lock out for long periods of time. So yeah, it's a great lift for me to be doing. What's
your favourite obstacle? Other than like running's not really obstacle. It's kind of
running's your rest in an obstacle race. When you do it, because what I do is races that go for 24 hours or more. So I've done 200-kilometre races and I've done 3-day events that Spartan put on and things. So the running part's your rest. My favourite thing is anything heavy, carrying heavy stuff.
Like sandbags and stuff?
Yes, sandbags, unusual objects. We do dead ball lifts. I love climbing ropes too. Yeah, but anything that's heavy and hard.
You like grindy stuff?
Yeah, I do. I do, yeah. I did a Spartan Agoge and it's like the pinnacle of Spartan and only a few people get in and they have ex-Marine Corps people running it who are very hardcore, and basically you have a heavy pack on your back for 2 to 3 days, and they just push you, and there's burpees and there's running and there's carrying and building stuff and things that seem ridiculous, and swimming through ice water and tying knots when you're exhausted under ice water, and and I love that. I love things that make you really feel like you've got to stretch your mental strength.
Have you ever done, what's the hardest Spartan? Is it the death race?
No, that's my next step.
Okay.
Yeah. So Agoge is sort of on par with the death race, but it's not a race.
Yeah.
It's just being pushed and not being cut and not having to drop out. And it goes for about...
Is that Agoge or is that the death race?
It goes for about 60 to 72 hours. Death race is a race.
Yeah.
So you're in it and you're an individual. Yeah. And you just never know what's going to happen to you.
Because you don't know, is it true that you don't know when it finishes?
No, you don't know when it starts and you don't know when it finishes. You know you've got to be in town by this time. You know you've got to stay at a certain place, and that's so they can come and get you and say, get out there now.
Yeah.
And you don't know when it finishes. I have no clue.
Can you tell me more about the death race? Because I've listened to, who's the founder of Spartan?
Joe DeSena.
Yeah, Joe DeSena.
He's awesome.
I've heard him talk before, and I've heard him talk about Spartan race and then death race, and I'm like, death race? Why would you do that? Like, it's so crazy.
It's just like, I think that we forget as humans what we're capable of. Like our body is capable of probably 10 or 15 times more than we ask it to do, but our mind holds us back. And I think these are epic adventures that teach us just what we can do and what we're capable of. And for me, I find when I go and do one of their hardcore endurance events, I come back, and every time I'm faced with an obstacle in real life, I can say, you know what? I crawled under barbed wire for 40 kilometres, so there's no way I'm not going to be able to cope with this. So it really sets you up for becoming a stronger person in life and realising what you have got and what you have got to gain. So death race is one of these races where you turn up. If you have to obviously be accepted. There's in all of Spartan's high-level events, there's qualifying requirements, and they have a theme usually, but the theme may not give you much information about what's going to happen.
Can you give me an example of a theme that they may
I
use?
know a couple of years ago the theme was death. So you think it's enough to scare you. You know, the whole thing is they play with your mind from the start.
Yeah.
So, so you turn up and you don't know what's going to happen to you. Not this year's death race, the one before, they had a guy that broke the world record in a barbed wire crawl. So he crawled for 12 hours underneath barbed wire, and obviously your whole body's ripped to shreds because it's in the American summer and it's hot, so you're wearing shorts and a singlet basically, and you get ripped by the barbed wire. But people keep going because it's just about harnessing that mind power instead of listening to what your body's telling you, because when we're sore, our mind shuts us down. It's not our body that stops, it's our mind that stops our body. And there's challenge after challenge after challenge, and some of them seem ridiculous. They may involve mind power. I know in one death race, people had to go up and down a mountain, and they had to get to the top, memorise the names of the last 12 presidents, run back down and relay those to somebody at the bottom, which may not sound hard. But when you've been put through extreme challenges for 48 hours, you're flat out remembering who you are, let alone remembering a list of names. So if you failed that, you had to go back up again and back down again. So there's mental challenge involved, there's physical challenge, but at the end of it, you come out a better person. You have this feeling that, you know what, I can conquer the world.
Wow.
So it's great. Yeah.
Do you think you've always been mentally strong for this stuff, or do you think that the training or the actual events are what have forged this mindset?
I think that I've always had a love of adventure and thought that I wanted to try things that were difficult, and I've not been a person to give in. So I know when I was at school, teachers used to call me stubborn and difficult, but I think if you can turn those characteristics into something positive, you can actually use them to harness the strength of your mind. And for me, it's about, I don't want to have to come back and say, hey, I gave up.
Yeah.
It's important to me to be able to say, you know what, I did my best and I kept going to the end and I didn't give in.
Has there ever been a time in your life where you've given up?
I don't know whether I've given up, but I do beat myself up a bit for not, like when I was younger, doing, like standing up more for what I wanted to do. You know, sometimes I think that we just do what we're told and we don't question that. And I'm not suggesting that everyone go out and go against authority, but I do think that no matter how old we are, we have a right to have some role in where our life's going to head and the direction that we're going in, and I think we should question things. Yeah, so I don't want to be in the position again where I just don't
go with the
question
flow.
something.
Yeah. I think it's really easy to like, you know, using the term being a sheep is like a little bit, you know, on the far side of that.
Yeah.
But I think it is really easy to just go with the flow and not just go against it, I guess.
I think a lot of it is to do with change. I think, like, people look at, okay, maybe I'd like to do this, but what have I got to give up? Whereas I think what we should be doing is saying, you know what, we can change what we do and then we can achieve this and then we can gain this. Instead of thinking, well, you know what, I've got to give up all the food I like, I've got to give up sleeping in the morning because I've got to get up and train, I've got to give up drinking or socialising. But you haven't really. You've only got to change the way you do things. You change what you eat, you change what you drink, you change the time you get out of bed, and the result is you really learn something and you gain something, and you gain amazing confidence, and you gain strength and health and fitness and experiences that you wouldn't have dreamed that you would have had. So for me, I think people are scared of change and giving things up.
One thing that's helped me with that has been my partner. She's just like, she challenges me to do things and step out of my comfort zone. I don't always listen. But is that something that you've sort of found as well? Like, what is your relationship like? Because I know you guys, you know, picked up and moved to Dubbo and then, you know, never really moved back. So like, does your partner do any races or anything first?
No, my partner's the complete polar opposite of me. Okay. You know, has no interest anymore in fitness or anything. When he was younger, he played football and he was in the Roosters grades, and we lived in Sydney, and he was very interested in fitness, and he did ventures and was a Queen Scout and all those sorts of things. And then as we had children, and we've got 5 boys and a daughter, I gave up a lot of what I did, but I still tried to support the things that he wanted to do, and definitely what the kids wanted to do. And I'm really lucky because now that we don't have the responsibility of the children at home, he said, you know, it's your turn. You've given everything up, and now it's my turn to support you in what you want to do. And sometimes I even feel like he's a bit like a stage parent, because he'll enter me in all these things and point out things that I should be entering. But it is great. It's the same as you. Like, he has this confidence that I can do anything. And I think part of me being able to do all the things I do is the fact that I think, you know what, he's sitting back in Australia, sitting up all night watching the live feed of where I am on the race course, which mountain I'm on in Iceland, or so I think I can't let him down. I've just got to keep going. So it's great to have that supportive person that believes in you and challenges you. So
What's the scariest situation you've been in doing these races?
I don't know.
Well, has there been a point where you're like in the middle of a race and been like, I may have made
what am I
difficult
doing?
choice?
What am I doing? I remember the first time I went to Iceland 2 years ago, nearly 3 years ago, for Spartan Ultra World Championships, and I was on top of a mountain, and it's really hard to tell the time in Iceland, by the way, because it's just dark all the time, so you don't know whether it's daylight but I suppose it probably would have been about 9 o'clock at night, and this blizzard hit, and with the wind chill factor, it was about minus 40 degrees, and there was no one around, because you can be on a race course with hundreds of other people but not see them the whole time. And I had to crouch down and try and walk like a duck because the wind was physically picking me up. And Spartan had been filming it in drones, and I could see this drone smashing down to the ground with the wind. And you can't see properly because it's dark, but you know that there's huge drop-offs on each side. And that was scary. That was really scary. But I got to the bottom, and I kept going, and I knew I had to go around on the next lap, and doing it the first time then takes that fear away. But quite often I'm in a position where I have to face my fear, and I think that's what it's about. There's some sort of satisfaction in being brave, because everybody's scared.
Yeah.
Absolutely everybody. And the only way we can be brave is if we do it anyway.
Yeah.
So you get a great satisfaction out of that, thinking, you know what, I was terrified, but I did it anyway. And I'm quite often terrified. I turn up in foreign countries, knowing nobody, on my own, line up at a race start, often the oldest person there,
Yeah.
and I do it. So I think fear's healthy, and I think, you know, it's there to be overcome. We grow from it.
Are there times where you've sort of seen your competitors and been like, oh, you know, like all of you guys, all these young whippersnappers?
Always. My first ever long distance race, long distance racing probably came into play about 4 or 5 years ago, where people started to do things for 24 hours or more, and it became something that was quite common.
Yeah.
And I remember Australia, True Grit, who's an ex-military organisation, all the guys were Australian commandos, and they put on this race series, which is normally about 12 kilometres, and it travels around Australia. They decided to hold a 24-hour race, and it was the first one, and it was the Australian titles. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try that. I'd never run over 20 Ks, and I'd done 3 obstacle races, but yeah, that was the first one in Australia, and it was probably my hardest one to do, and I got the guts to get down there. And then when I stood at the starting line, they were all young, and they were mostly men. There weren't many women, and I thought, am I making a mistake? But didn't have much time to think. And once you get out there on the course, it's a community that's very encouraging. It's much like CrossFit and weightlifting and things like that. Everyone's supportive, so even if they're lapping you or overtaking you, they don't do it without screaming words of encouragement on the way. So it's not as scary as you think it's going to be.
Do you find that I think like ultra marathons and a lot of these enduro races are really funny in that there are women that are much better than men. Like, it's a very equal sport.
It is, yeah. My coach is an example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she beats the men all the time. Yeah. And I think it's because it's a mental game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Like, when you hit the 12-hour mark, of course everybody needs a degree of fitness and a high degree of fitness, but what it comes down to is everyone out on that course is pretty fit. So what the difference is who can put up with the pain the most, because everyone's hurting, and who can put up with the little voice in your head that's saying, you know what, if you stop, you could have a sleep, or why don't you just curl up there for 15 minutes, or so it's the person that can push through that. And I think sometimes women are very good at doing that, because as mothers, they have to develop a lot of mental strength.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, they're used to not sleeping.
Yeah, they are. They're used to not sleeping. They're used to having to give up things.
Yeah.
They're used to having to have a cold or the flu or be in pain, but still deal with their family's needs. So I think it's a skill that we do have a little bit of an advantage with.
Yep,
Yeah.
I can 100% see that.
Yeah.
I mean, my mum is right now quite sick with tonsillitis.
Yep.
And I borrowed her car to come up here because my car's not really great to drive to Dubbo, and because of that I stayed at their house Thursday night, and she was trying to take care of me and making me food, and I was like, Mum, like,
you're sick.
You're 10 steps away from being in the hospital, like,
Yeah.
I can't believe that you can function at such a high level, and she's obviously done that my whole life.
Exactly.
So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Dad isn't like that. Dad's the exact same way, but
Dad still gets to come home at the end of his day of doing that and put his feet up, and Mum takes care of him.
Yeah, as
makes
well.
Him dinner.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think sometimes that's why women do well, but also women have the opportunity now of doing a lot of things fitness-wise that they didn't used to have the opportunities of doing. On the courses that I race on, the weights are the same for men and women of what you carry. The obstacles are the same. The distances are the same. There's really no difference.
Oh, wow.
So I think that says a lot about what women can achieve, how women train, and what we expect of women now.
So do you think it's the expectation that is changing their fitness and their performance, rather than do you think like in a sport that did that more often, like CrossFit's like that, like CrossFit, a lot of the weights and stuff nowadays are getting more and more closer together, and reps and what they ask of women, and you can see that the women are tanks, and piece, whereas in other sports, what's asked of them is a little bit less.
I think it's a reflection on how society's starting to see women.
Yeah.
Like, I think we saw them as people that men looked after, and then we've seen them as more, maybe they're equal in the home, and now it's not only in sport, it's in everything. You know, women are getting equal recognition and demanding it in a lot of ways. You know, they want to be able to do the same things. So I guess on the sporting field, we're letting them play traditional men's sports. And women do really well at it. They actually put on competitions that everyone's enjoying watching. So I think attitudes to women in general are changing, and the sporting field is probably one of the first places where it's really truly recognised.
Yeah, it's probably important because sport is such a big part of society. To see women that way, because I still know like field sports and stuff, women get paid much less.
So they're doing the same thing,
but they're doing the same thing.
Look at cricket is a big example.
And they're not even cheating. The men's team cheats.
Exactly. Women are achieving better results than the men's team, but they're still not getting anywhere near the amount of money. So, but I do think attitudes are changing. Like, we have a televised women's rugby league now. That never would have happened.
Yep, that's true. And I mean, there are sports that are quite equal. Like in weightlifting, the earning potential for women and men are pretty much the same. The problem is that it's zero.
That's exactly right. It's the same in obstacle racing, but it is the same prize money. It's the same prize money whether you win or lose. You know. Whether you're a woman or a man, you've got the same sort of opportunities to win. And you don't get anything better by being the male contestant. So we don't feel like a second-rate citizen. And they have a lot of teams that compete that are male-female together teams now, the same as in CrossFit.
What does a team event look like?
Oh,
do you just have to finish together?
It can be really different. In World's Toughest Mudder, a team event is the team stays together, does every lap together, does everything together and finishes together. In the World Championships that have been held in Australia, the 24-hour World Championships, the Enduro ones, which are the OCR Federation race, you have a team and it's done in relay form. So it can be very different. It just depends. I'm not good at being a team player.
You're better at the individual side of things.
Because I feel like then I'm not going to be letting anyone down, and I can control what I'm doing more, and I don't have to feel like I've got to slow down if somebody just happened to be slower than me. So for me, I guess it's about challenging myself, and the best way I feel I can do that is by doing it as an individual.
Have you done Oxfam?
Yes, I have.
So that's a team event, right?
It is a team event. I did that this year, and it was my most terrifying thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I did it with a couple of young guys from F45, and they wanted to do a really fast time, so I was quite stressed about it because I thought, oh my goodness, but it panned out really well.
Oh, cool.
Kept up with them, and then the rest of the team sort of struggled around the 70-kilometre mark, so we didn't sort of get through as fast as we wanted to, but it was good. It was a
that's when your fitness finally kicked in at the 70-kilometre mark.
I was ready to run. But everyone's different, and I think it's really good to be part of other people's experiences as well.
Yes.
I think.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think sometimes we tend to have this idea that an elite athlete is somebody that isn't us, and that we could never be. It's someone that's trained since they were 4, and they've also got unique talents that you're born with. But it's not. It's about somebody that really wants to give it a go. It can be anyone. You can all compete on any level. You just have to decide how much commitment you want to put in. I don't doubt that there are people with abilities and talents, but they've got to work at it too. Everyone has to work at it, and you just have to decide how much work you put in. So people get quite surprised when they realise that if they want to put in the work, then they can reap the rewards. And I think it's great to encourage people to do that, because I know how I feel when I achieve something, and it's really great to see other people feeling like that.
And I think it's really, if there was a meaning to life, I do think it's your relationships with people, like how you impact people, how they impact you. So especially for me as a coach, like one of the most amazing things about doing the seminar yesterday was just being able to meet, 30 new people
Yep.
and then have some effect on, their
Yes.
lifting and the way they think about things.
Exactly.
And I guess that's the same way with, competing with someone or, just rubbing shoulders with someone at the start or finish line or halfway through a race. And
Yeah, and sometimes you don't realise how much impact you're going to have on someone's life. I remember when I first started this, before I did my first 24-hour race, I researched everything and I found this story about this woman, Deanna Blake, and I thought, oh my goodness, she's amazing. And I was like a little groupie and I'm following everything she did, and every time I could see a public post about her, I'd put comments up on social media. And then I turned up at the enduro race and she was there.
Yeah.
And my husband kept saying, go over and talk to her, and I'm saying, no, I can't.
yeah,
Anyway, we ended up talking and now we're very close friends. And she said to me, you don't know who's watching and you don't know whose lives you're impacting. And I thought, well, I was watching her and she impacted my life. And if it wasn't for me following her, I wouldn't have even considered
doing that race.
Yeah. And now people come to me and they might just say, oh, wow, you really inspired me, and because of that I've gone and tried this. And you do. You feel like, you know what, that's what it's about. It's about not only doing the best you can and being a better person today than you were yesterday, but helping other people to do that too. Because there's no point in life just going through life trying to be the winner and having nobody to take with you, because it's pretty boring.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Do you do a lot of climbing stuff?
A lot of the obstacles involve climbing.
Yeah, like walls and things that you have to scale?
Jumping walls, climbing up different things, scaling across things. Sometimes some of the challenges, depending on what you do, like I quite like military style challenges just for the sake of being challenged. So some of those will involve rappelling, and trying to get up and down cliffs and things.
How do you train for that stuff?
I guess it's really I do a lot of my training outside, which is fabulous, because I think it's really great to get outside and have a bit of a bond with nature. There's nothing like running at 4 o'clock in the morning and then still be running as the sun rises. So pretty much in Dubbo, we're fairly flat.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about.
Yeah, so I go out to Wellington and I use Mount Arthur area quite a bit, but also if I want to do something more specific, sometimes we go to the Warren Bungles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're very restricted in what you're allowed to do because it's a national park, and obviously insurance and them not wanting people to injure themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my husband's pretty good. He's created me a lot of equipment. I've got walls built at home, and I have a big monkey bar rig that's huge and very high, and rings and rope climbs, and so.
Are you quite good at monkey bars?
Not too bad.
Is your grip strength really strong?
My grip strength is strong, but I train a lot of grip strength. I have a coach in Melbourne, and I do a lot of F45.
And what's her name, so we can just give her
Deanna Blake.
Okay.
Yeah, she's amazing. Blake Fit. And so she will get me to do sessions where I'm carrying awkward items like heavy buckets for farmers carries for kilometres and kilometres, and you really don't want to put them down because you've got to do 30 burpees every time you do. And I do a lot of hanging just for the sake of hanging off bars, and lots of rolling things, rolling very small pieces of stick with a rope on it to pull bricks up high. Yeah, so I do have pretty good grip strength. Yeah, you need
what does a sort of common or a typical hanging workout look like for you?
Well, a lot of them incorporate doing things with weights along with a bit of running plus hanging.
So you're doing it out of breath as well?
Yeah, so you are. So you're working under fatigue and under load, because obviously that's what we do in competition. You might run 800 metres, jump over a wall, run another 400, carry something up a hill. So everything's done under fatigue. So a lot of it I do around one of the gyms.
Yeah.
So I will lap the building several times, and then I might come in and do lunges holding onto kettlebells or weights, and then there might be some L-sits hanging from bars, or a lot of ring work. I do a lot of ring push-ups.
Yeah.
So
just to build the stability in the shoulders and stuff.
Yeah, because you're jumping up and over things, and while you've got the advantage in the gym, doing things strictly is quite hard. And sometimes you don't realise how much a strict movement equates towards what you're doing out on an obstacle course, because you get the run up.
Yeah.
So you run up, and even though you're doing like the muscle up movement, it doesn't always equate in your head that that's really what it is. So sometimes you find that by doing these things that I really struggle with in the gym, like the pull-ups, the chin-ups, the ring work, it really helps you enormously when you're doing it in real life, because you've got to run up with it, and you've got that extra momentum which helps to propel you.
How many pull-ups can you do?
Not many.
Yeah.
I'm much better at chin-ups.
Yep.
Yep. Strict pull-ups I can probably do without having to drop off, about 6, and then get back on, and then another 6. Yeah, it's something I really need to work on.
So that would be like one of the weaknesses that you're trying to work on right now.
Yeah, but it's really funny. If there's an obstacle that involves pull-up motion, I can do that. But I think it's because of the fact that there's momentum.
Yeah.
And my head, sometimes, as I've said to you before, your mind's a powerful thing. And so I think sometimes my head doesn't realise that the movement I'm being asked to do in the gym is something I do all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but you need a lot of shoulder strength too, because it's no good doing monkey bars and rings like at full hang, because you need to sort of make sure that you're up a bit, so you've got the strength to hold on and swing and move and grab things.
Yeah.
We have a lot of where you're holding on by the tips of your fingers and moving across things, and it's no good like tips of fingers, and it's the same as doing pegboard.
Yeah. Do you like things like pegboards?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, they're challenging, and I feel like you feel them for the next couple of days, and it reminds you of what you've done. Yeah, I do like pegboard. It is
And they're probably
challenging.
because they're they're kind of scary too.
Yeah.
So when you're up there, like you're gonna be a lot more careful to make sure you come back down.
Yes.
Where on a pull up, you do 2 pull-ups and you're like, this is hard, maybe I'll just drop off.
Exactly.
You don't have a choice with pegboard, you got to come back down slowly.
Yeah, exactly. And with things like rope traverses and things like that too, it's exactly the same. You've just got to keep going, otherwise you're going to fall in the river or on the ground or whatever it is. So I guess that does drive you to be better. You don't have the option. So it is a mind game in many ways.
You would have to eat a lot of food, right?
Well, I'm vegan.
Okay.
So I have to eat a real lot of food.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I only eat whole foods. I don't eat anything processed. So my whole Sunday afternoon is preparing food for the week. But I probably eat about...
Is that what you did beforehand?
No, I did it this afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I probably eat between 11 and 12,000 kilojoules a day. A lot of protein in that, obviously.
Do you get that mainly from like legumes and beans and lentils and stuff like that?
Yep, a few nuts. I don't use supplements, so it all has to come from food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most things that we eat have some degree of protein in, so if you're eating enough of them and you're eating them in the right combination, because a lot of the fact that we eat so much protein and we don't seem to get the advantage from it is because we're not eating enough of other vitamins and minerals which help us to absorb the protein really well.
Yeah.
So you've just got to make sure your diet's really balanced
Of course.
and 100% on track, and you can't afford to use any of it for empty kilojoules. So
Yep.
as much as I'd love an ice cream or a packet of chips, it doesn't happen, because that could be something that's good for me and it's really going to help me.
What do you eat when you're in a race?
When I'm in a race, you have to look at things that are very easy to digest. Obviously, you're burning quite a few hundred calories every lap or every sort of 10 to 12 Ks. So you've got to replace some of those, otherwise you're not going to keep going and you have problems with cramping and things.
Yeah.
So things like nut butters that are really easy to digest.
Does that include things like peanut butter, or you don't eat peanut butter?
I don't eat peanut butter, but I eat cashew butter, almond butter. I also like quinoa.
Yeah.
So I make a bit of a soup with quinoa. Warm broths are always really good. So sometimes I might have a pre-made vegetable soup with quinoa in it. I try not to waste any of the kilojoules. You don't want to put any energy into having to digest anything that's too hard to digest.
Yeah.
Because I need all the energy I can for running and doing the obstacles. I eat fruit. Bananas are great. Bananas are really good, and it's making sure that you've got electrolytes in your water too is a really important thing.
And how do you do that? Do you just add salts, or salt and magnesium, or?
Well, I actually have a friend of mine who makes a really good electrolyte that's really good quality. So I use those. Yeah.
Have you ever messed with like pickle juice or anything? I know like a lot of...
Yes. I went to World's Toughest Mudder in Nevada, and it was the middle of the night and there was a dust storm, and even though it was November, it was really cold overnight. It was hot in the day we started and it was about 38 degrees, and the temperature just started to dip, and we were in and out of water in the middle of the night, and everybody started to cramp up. And one of the guys that I was with was a seasoned endurance person, and he gave me some pickle juice, and it actually, I don't know whether it's your head saying, okay, you're better now, but it actually worked.
I've heard pickle juice is really good for cramps, especially a lot of the OCR guys, enduro guys use pickle juice. Yeah. And it's so weird that that's a thing.
I know, and it doesn't taste that great, but I mean, by the time that you've been doing that and you've got dust in your mouth and everything else, you don't really care. But yeah, it really worked, and a lot of people swear by it. But I find that if you can keep yourself hydrated and keep your electrolytes up, you shouldn't get to that point.
Yes.
Like, it's not very often that I've had problems with cramping. Some people have it all the time. So.
And a lot of people who are new to it don't realise that just drinking water actually pulls a lot of those minerals out of your system as well.
Exactly, and a lot of people don't realise the importance of getting your water intake right. A couple of years ago, I was in a 200-kilometre race in Queensland, in the hinterland there in the mountains, and there was this girl that was ahead of me, and she was doing really well and running really fast, but she was really sweating because she had quite a fast pace going and drinking lots and lots and lots of water, and she ended up flushing her cells out and passing out and going to hospital, and she was really sick, much sicker than she would have been if she hadn't drunk enough water. Yeah. So it can be just as dangerous to drink too much water, particularly if you've got no electrolytes in it, as it can be to not drink enough. So it's surprising. Yeah.
And obviously you don't do this because you're not into having the processed foods and stuff, but a lot of enduro guys use those like energy packs, you know, like the gels
and things.
Have you ever used those?
No, I've tried one once.
Yeah.
I didn't like. It was quite for me it was quite a strange taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I haven't used them. I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people swear by them, and they probably are great. You have to use what fits into
your ethos
and your diet, you know, because you don't want to change anything on race day, because that's the last thing you want to be dealing with is nutrition not suiting your stomach or not. Yeah.
The runs on race day.
Exactly. Yeah, sitting well for you, you don't want it, and people do change their nutrition and get really caught out. So I think sometimes, as boring as it is, you need to go with what you've got. And
have you ever had to deal with an upset tummy on a race day?
No, I've been lucky.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. I've dealt with like broken things, and but not. And a lot of asthma. I get asthma.
Yep.
So I've had to deal with that, but never upset stomach.
Tell me about a time where like asthma's been an issue for you. Have you always had asthma?
Yeah, I think well, mildly, but when we actually moved to Dubbo because our children were struggling in Sydney, and they all had asthma and they were all young, and the doctors suggested we move away from the city. But then when we came here, the trade-off was that I got asthma, so it's to do with, I think, a lot of the change of season and pollen. So this time of year is my worst time of year for me, but it's also a time when lots of events are held. So 2 years ago in September, there was the tourist 200-kilometre, and I had really bad asthma, to the point where people said you could hear my wheezing before you could hear my footsteps as I was coming around. But I got through it, and I just had to... I guess it teaches you to really focus on your breathing and
make sure you're like nasal breathing
and stay upright and do things in correct form and try and depress your diaphragm as little as possible. I had to slow my pace down, but I was able to sort of make it up by being more consistent. So it's a matter of just trying to decide, am I going to push through it, and if I am going to, how can I still make it work? There's always some way you can adapt, I think.
What have you broken?
I've broken 13 toes. I've only got 10, but I've broken some of them different times. One wrist, one arm, my tibia, my fibula. I've torn my syndesmosis tendon when I broke my ankle and my talus. I've broken just about everything. Ribs, yeah. So.
It seems like fun.
Yeah, it is fun, but I've got through it. And I've learnt a lot about rehab, which was, I never sort of was a supporter of mobility and rehab. I just kept thinking it's so boring to have to sit here and be so slow.
Yeah.
Why would you waste your time? But it's taught me a lot. It's taught me how important they are and how important it is to look after your body. And particularly as you get older, if you want it to do things, you've got to be kind to it.
Mm. And what has been like the worst injury that you've had? Like, what was the one that where you're like, oh, damn it?
My ankle, when I broke my ankle at
How
Spartan,
did you break that?
I came off what's called the bender, and it's like
I've been on a bender before.
have you? So you go,
But it's not the bender you're talking
okay.
about.
No, it's probably not. No, so it's like you jump up and you do a pull up, and then when you've pulled yourself up, you can then reach the rungs. So you can get up around a ladder that bends out that way, and then you climb up and over and down. And as I jumped off,
Was it a rope ladder?
No, it's,
Okay.
it's like metal. It's a metal
Yep.
sort of obstacle. And as I jumped off it, my foot went into a hole, but I went to keep going, and that's what did it. And then I went over, and so I tried to tape it up and keep going, but it wasn't going to happen. And then I didn't listen to what I was told.
Yeah.
And it created problems for a long time. The doctor said to me when I could take it out of the moon boot and I could trial it for 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh great, there's a 24-hour race, so I'll do the 24-hour race as my trial. Well, when I came back from that, it was really smashed again, and it took a lot of work. And at one point I couldn't even squat. I had no dorsiflexion or plantar flexion in it. I had to work very hard with Red. That's how I met Red, the physio.
Yeah, Adrian.
Yeah.
Who was on the podcast last week.
Oh, okay, no worries. Yeah, so that's how I met him,
Yeah.
and he helped me enormously with it. And then I've got a PT that I work with here a couple of times a week, and he also, we did another session purely on rehab, and it was probably 15 to 18 months before it worked properly again.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you have full dorsiflexion now, or
Yeah, I
is
do.
it? Yeah.
I
Of
do.
course. At least you've come back. I know
Yeah.
it's probably would have been shorter if you hadn't messed up.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the learning process as well, right?
It is, and I mean, too, when you're older, it's really hard to come back from injury, and so if you want to, you've really got to work at it. And I guess that was a lesson I learned. Look after your body and listen to what it's telling you a little bit more than I do. Yeah.
Wow. What is the race that you're training for right now? Because you've got a race coming up, right?
You have. First week in November in Sweden, it's the Spartan Ultra World Championships.
Cool.
So,
And what does that involve?
it involves 24 hours of running laps, and there's usually between sort of 20 and 30 obstacles a lap, and going the fastest, I guess. Yeah.
Are you
it's
looking
great.
forward to it?
I am. It's always like my first year. This is the third year of the Ultra World Championships, and the first 2 years it was in Iceland. So I went from weather in mid-December that was 40 degrees here and landed there, and it was minus temperatures.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was a big thing to get used to, but it was also amazing because you get to see the world from a perspective that no one else does. Who else gets to stand on top of the mountain at 2 a.m. in the morning with a blizzard blowing, no one else around, in complete darkness, and the northern lights come out? You know, nobody in a restricted area. It was great. So Sweden, I'm hoping, will be the same. Obviously, it's a different location, but Spartan always makes it really tough.
Yeah.
And there's always mountains involved. There's always extreme weather conditions, and then the obstacles are pretty tough themselves, particularly when you're doing them over and over again. You are allowed to fail obstacles, but you can't go on without doing penalties.
Yeah. Is that how many burpees? It's usually
Well, it
burpees,
can be
right?
burpee penalties, but at World Championships level, often it can be something else. So you may have to carry an Atlas stone for however long, you know, over a difficult
Oh, so you do
terrain
have to
stick.
do a bit of strongman stuff.
Oh, a lot of strongman stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
I love it. That's my favourite. Yeah.
Because you were telling me that after this year you might want to start doing
Yes,
some more
I'm
strongman.
looking for a new challenge, yeah. So I remember in Iceland, as one of the obstacles we had to carry an Atlas stone, and so obviously they're made of cement, and nobody really thought about it, but cement's porous. So it rained and it snowed and it got to minus temperatures. So as you went on, the Atlas stone became heavier and heavier and heavier, and it was ridiculous to try and get this big, hard, cold thing off the ground. So you have challenges with the weather that we'd never have.
And were you wearing like full kit, or were you like bare skin on the Atlas stone?
No, I'm a cold. I have a low body fat percentage, so I feel the cold.
Couldn't tell.
No, I do. Yeah, so,
No, I believe you. I was making a joke.
Yeah, so I feel the cold.
Yeah.
And so lots of people that come from Europe and are very accustomed to it don't.
Yeah, they're just in t-shirts.
Yeah, and pretty much the majority of the people that go to these events are from that half of the world. So they're in winter, and it's pretty much only the Australians and the New Zealanders that are in summer. So so I had anything I could wear on. I probably looked a bit like the Michelin Man, which it's great because you're warm. And in my head, if I'm warm, I'm happy and I can keep going. So I would rather overheat than freeze. It's very hard to come back from hypothermia, but it makes it awkward when you're trying to pick things up and swing off.
Oh, I can imagine.
When you've got layers and layers on,
Because
so you've got to pick them well.
The funny thing about Atlas stones is like, you're picking them up when they're kind of wet, but if they're dry, they actually draw the moisture out of your skin.
Yep.
So if you finish doing an Atlas stone session, your skin is just red raw and dry because that concrete just pulls all that moisture out.
I know. But it's fun.
Oh yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah.
And I think you really like strongman stuff as well.
I love it.
Because there's a certain amount of hurt to it as well.
Is there?
Yeah. Well, it's just it's a shorter time domain.
Yep.
But it's like, how much can you hurt in a minute? How much can you hurt in 2 minutes?
And
how
fast?
Much
can you put up with?
How much can you put up with? So I think it's like right up your alley.
Yeah, I sort of like a lot of the stuff that I do. People have said to me, "Oh, have you ever considered strongman?" Because we do lots of. I have a PT session with a functional PT here in town twice a week. And we do a lot of strange stuff. So we do sled pulls, but I have to hook my feet into the sled and just use my hands. So I'm walking like this, and pulling it with this part of my foot. And all that sort of stuff. And people have said, you probably love strongman. And then I looked into it a bit and I thought, you know what? It's probably an extension of what I'm training in my functional fitness sessions.
Does it suck? Because do you have an off season for like your races?
So everything sort of comes to a culmination between October and December. And then probably there's very little, particularly in Australia, there's very little between January and March.
Okay, so you have a little bit of time.
Yeah, a little bit
where
of
you're
time.
off. Yeah, because it's the hard thing with a lot of sports, like weightlifting in particular, doesn't really follow a proper season. Like it's like competitions like all the time if you want, but you want an off season.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if it's the same case for you.
Yeah.
Because in that off season, that's when you could focus on some strength and maybe do some strongman for fun.
Exactly. Well, this year in the off season, I went to a couple of endurance sessions run by a world champion kickboxer down in Sydney, and that was really great because it challenges different parts of your body and muscles that you don't normally use. Yeah, and that was really, really good. And I was sort of toying with the idea of maybe doing kickboxing, but I think I need to do things that are more strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really where my love of fitness lies. So, and I feel like that's where I want to push my limits. So, yeah. So while it was great to experience it, and that's I think what January to March is about, trying new things. Yeah.
What's it like to see the Northern Lights? That's been a dream of mine.
It's amazing. Everyone was so competitive. Like there's these guys from Scandinavia and from Europe and from the USA and Canada. They're just so competitive, like the Ryan Atkins and the Jonathan Albans that do every race around the world. And even every single one of them you could hear, the whole race course sort of stopped and everybody just went, "Oh my God," and looked up at the sky. Like it takes over the whole sky. There's green lights and it's flashing and there's little zigzags that come towards the ground, and it's magical. It's absolutely magical.
I've seen photos, but what I've heard is that the photos just can't do it justice.
No, because you feel like you're part of the glow. You feel like the whole area is glowing and you're in this glow. Yeah, and yeah, it's just amazing. I didn't realise like what they were going to be like, and we were so lucky that they came out sort of in the middle of the race.
Because they're not always out either,
no,
right?
they're not. People spend years chasing them and never get to see them. And then you can just be lucky. There's areas where it's more regular for them to come out and they can predict it a little bit, but it changes if the weather changes. And in all of the Scandinavian countries where they're visible, the weather's very changeable.
Yeah.
Like it can change, have 6 seasons in one day.
Yeah.
So while it's meant to be a good night to see them, that can change rapidly. So yeah, it's luck, I think. We were blessed.
Wow.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, because I think you can see some lights even in Tassie. There's like a southern lights.
The southern,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if it's the same or different.
Borealis australis, is that?
I think it's something like that.
Yeah, so they're
Oh,
similar.
Aurora australis.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Because northern lights are Aurora borealis.
Yeah. So I haven't seen them, the southern ones, but I've seen the northern ones.
Well, I think the northern ones are more impressive.
Oh, they were impressive. It was amazing. Yeah, and I think that's what this has been for me. It's been a journey in seeing the world from a perspective that most people don't get to see it from. You can't imagine, like I know when we were in Mongolia, we were on the top of a mountain at the most remote Buddhist monastery, and we got a blessing from one of the oldest priests in Mongolia. Who gets to do that? Nobody. So you get to see the world from a whole new perspective, and you have memories that are worth more than any amount of money or anything that you can own. So yeah, it's been great.
What have been some other really cool things that have happened then? Like that's obviously super cool, meeting a monk, but
yeah, and on that same Mongolia Agoge, we shot flaming arrows from Mongolian longbows that had been made by the last Mongolian longbow maker, and we learnt how to do it the traditional way. It was amazing. And I think just from a people perspective, when I was in Canada, I was lucky enough to get into the Australian team for the Short Course World Championships.
Yeah.
And they were at Blue Mountains in Canada, and they're only 16 k's long. So just before the race, the day before the race, I'd been volunteering and helping out, and I got home that night and my ankle that had been broken had swollen up, and it was enormous and I could hardly move it. And the team manager said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, I've come here. You haven't got any, it's not about being replaced or anything, so I'm going to do it anyway. And if I'm slow, I'm slow. If I only get halfway around, I only get halfway around. And it took me a lot more time than it should have. I made the cut-off for finishing, so I didn't get disqualified. But as I came down into the last kilometre and a half, all the young guys from the Australian team, there were a few girls and a few guys, were lining the course, and they were all cheering me on. And they were all pacing me by running alongside and talking me through the obstacles. And it just, it was a moment of camaraderie and teamwork that can never be matched. And I got to the end, and there was this huge wall that I had to run up and climb and pull myself over. And I did it only because they were all there and telling me I could. Even though I could hardly move my foot, I still got myself over this wall and finished and didn't have to pull out and made the time cut off. So I think that was probably one of the best things, the camaraderie.
Wow.
You don't realise, what people can do for you. Yeah, it was amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I actually said to them, I felt like, I don't know if you've ever seen the film Cool Runnings.
I have seen Cool Runnings.
I felt like the Jamaican bobsled team in that scene, at the Olympics where they carry it over and then they were recognised by the rest of the world. I just felt so special. It was great. Yeah.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, it is good. It just shows you what you can do. Yeah.
Cool. I think that's probably a good place to leave off.
Okay.
Where can people find you if they want to follow your journey?
I'm on Instagram.
Yeah.
So at Currey Melanie, and I'm
so that's
on
C-U-R-R-E-Y.
Yep.
And is it .Melanie or just Melanie?
Melanie.
Okay.
Yep. And then I'm on Facebook. Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
guys, make sure you follow her and see the cool things she's doing.
And things that you could do too. Yeah.
And obviously, if you want to reach out and ask her a question, I'm sure she's more than happy to answer.
Definitely. Love to see people interested in anything that I'm doing and maybe doing it themselves.
And if you see her at the start line, go say hello.
Yes, please. I'll feel intimidated, so it'll be great to have a friend.
Guys, you can find RAW Barbell Club at RAW Barbell Club on all of our social medias. So that's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, see what the gym is doing, see what I'm doing, and make sure to subscribe on YouTube, and then you can see awesome interviews like this, as well as the other cool things that the gym does. If you like this podcast, make sure to share it and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. And if you really, really want to support the podcast, you now can. Making this podcast is a lot of fun, but it thrives on your donations. So if you want to help us out, all we're asking for is the price of a coffee. If every single person donated a coffee, we'd have enough to not only do the fun stuff that we're doing, but keep this podcast going for another few months. Thank you to everyone who's already donated, and if you do want to donate, just go to www.rawbarbellclub.com/donate. Thanks guys so much for listening, and thank you Mel for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Guys, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
If you like that episode, I really think you might like this one. And if you want to search for more episodes, guys, click this little circle thing right here. If you want to stay notified, make sure to click that subscribe button below and click that notification tab.